3, 2, 1, live.
Live.
We're live.
Welcome.
Hey, friends. We are the Hunting Public. And sorry for being here tonight a little bit later than we originally anticipated. It took us a little bit longer than we wanted to get out of the woods. We literally just ran in the door and threw these headphones on. And, yeah.
Well, how'd the evening go?
Went pretty good. Went a lot better than me and Ted thought when we got in the tree at 6 o'clock. We were running a little late. We walked like 4 miles today with stands on our backs, and yeah, it was not fun. And it just eventually ended up sitting on a bean field, and I was like, this is never going to work. We're just going to see like a spike and a doe or something. Ended up seeing like 35 deer and 3 big bucks. It was just insane. But yeah.
There you go. All that hiking was worth it, right?
Yeah. I mean, all that hiking was
right by the vehicle.
Yeah, to basically watch deer walk right in front of the Smurf and out into the beans from across the field. But anyway, hope that some of you have been able to get out lately if your season's open and have some fun in the woods. If not, you need to, because obviously the deer have been moving. Mm-hmm. As we go through this live feed, guys, we want you to be posting questions. Anything that you've got in mind related to hunting, post it down below, and we'll do our best to answer it. But, yeah, we just want to kind of let you all know what the Hunting Public is, what it is that we do, and kind of our background and where we came from.
Yeah.
You want to start off, Zach?
Actually, let's maybe talk a little bit about what the Hunting Public is, in case people don't know, and then we can show our YouTube page.
Yeah, that's
like that.
right. The Hunting Public is basically our hunting brand that we created that is supposed to engage the hunting public. And we made it for the hunting public because we are just like each and every one of you. We're average folks that love to hunt. I mean, we hunt mostly public land and travel to do it in a variety of states. And, that's the crowd that we want to relate to.
And we also have a focus on hunting with friends, family, because that's what got us into it, which we'll talk about a lot more on this podcast. But I think just including everybody, making hunting fun, social, all aspects of it, being fun, I guess, is the main thing that we're going for out here. Because to us, it is fun.
Yeah, essentially, we're content creators. We've got the YouTube page, Facebook, Instagram. And essentially what we do is, we post our hunts soon after they happen. So they're timely. We try to make them as educational as possible and fun as possible. And hopefully people get that social element out of what we do. A lot of it's based on hunting with this group of guys and our family and friends.
Yep.
Yeah, and you can check out the Hunting Public YouTube page. We're staring at it right here.
Here's a look at it right here.
We've already been on our deer tour for the last month, hunting public land across multiple states. And we've had a blast doing that, met a lot of new friends. And, we're back in Iowa now hunting public land. And tonight's hunt will probably be on this channel in the next 3 or 4 days. That's how we operate. We hunt, film it, and then we come in and edit it up and put it up here for you guys to show you, what we're seeing in the field, so we can hopefully help you harvest a deer maybe.
Yeah, as you can see here, we have our latest 14 videos is what we're calling the deer tour. We started out in Kentucky, Nebraska, 1st of September. Just got back from Minnesota, and now we are hunting in our home state of Iowa.
Yeah, and we do turkey tours. We do small game hunting. We do bow fishing. I mean, we just like being outside. Try to get as much fun outdoor related activities as possible, and a lot of that you can find on the YouTube channel, especially like during the off season. We have all kinds of different stuff, whether that's talking about hunting, deer, turkey, whatever, or just going fishing.
Yeah, and like we mentioned a while ago, a lot of our hunts do happen on public land. We occasionally hunt private land. And we have friends that hunt private land on permission or some lands that they own. We don't care. I mean, hunting can be for everyone in a variety of different situations, but all of us, we kind of came from similar backgrounds in different areas of the world. And that's, ultimately, one thing I pride us in is the fact that none of us have forgot where we came from. Like, it's obvious that the way we learned to hunt still carries over
to
the stuff that we do today.
Yeah, I mean, we come from surprisingly similar backgrounds, really, when you think about it. Started hunting as kids, hunting with family and friends, a lot of it on public land, and it's kind of all come full circle, really, 20 years later now. We're just kind of, like we said, a group of guys having fun hunting on public land.
Yeah.
When did you start hunting, Greg?
When I was probably 5 or 6.
Oh, the squirrel pictures.
Well, started out with a BB gun, pellet gun, chasing sparrows and starlings and rabbits and squirrels around my grandparents' farm. So that's been 32 years ago. So I got a few years on you guys.
Greg didn't just hunt squirrels. He hunted squirrels with a bow and out of a tree stand sometimes.
Oh, yeah, it was just like...
was very successful doing it.
Yeah, it was just like hunting deer. I took it as seriously as a deer hunter would. Here we go. This is me.
That's so incredible.
Look at that hat.
Yeah, that was my favorite hat. Big insulated hat with my bow hunter education patch on the front of it. That was 1992 or 3. I'd have been 11 or 12 years old at that point.
That's the year I was born.
That's the year you were born. There you go. I was shooting squirrels with a bow when you were in diapers.
But that brings up a good point. A lot of folks that get into hunting nowadays, they see deer hunting, for example, or turkey hunting, and they think, okay, I got to dive right into that. And, I mean, I learned doing the same thing, except it was like with rabbit hunting with my uncle and his beagles. And my cousins, we would just all get together and go out rabbit hunting. And that's how I learned a lot, when I was super young to hunt, and then eventually kind of graduated to deer and turkeys and went on from there. But that's definitely something that a lot of people almost forget about is small game hunting. Like, it's super fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for people that don't get to have that experience, that maybe just jump into big game hunting. I mean, there's such an advantage in starting out when you're young or new to the sport and starting by hunting small game, bow fishing, and just hunting with people that help to mentor you. I mean, I basically had all those experiences, and that by the time I started bow hunting for deer, there was a lot of that learning curve had already been taken care of by
just the simple woodsman, not necessarily simple, but the woodsmanship aspect of it is
a lot of people just dive straight into deer hunting having never set foot really in the woods hunting something, and on top of that they want to shoot a big buck, and then they're faced with disappointment. It's like, well, if you sort of step by step and eventually graduate up to that, you can have a lot better experiences in the field. Like, you kind of know what to expect then at that point. What about you, Zinger?
Well, when I was like probably 4 or 5, I started going with my grandpa squirrel hunting, and I would sit with him, and we'd sit and we'd be super still, and he'd shoot squirrels. And I remember one day I asked him, "Hey, Grandpa, do you mind if I shoot?" And that first day I shot a gray squirrel, which I have mounted. It's
Where's that at?
It's at my parents' house.
Oh, that's awesome.
We gotta have that in here. What are you doing? Like, that thing needs to be right here.
Well, Mom and Dad, if you're watching, bring that out next time.
Yeah, we definitely got to have that.
Yeah, but we did a lot of that squirrel hunting, me and my grandpa, for several years, and then eventually started deer and turkey hunting with him. And then my dad was always bow hunting, and I always wanted to bow hunt. And I was not, for the longest time, I wasn't strong enough to pull. I was a small kid. I was very small. It took me a long time to get big enough to where I could draw 40 pounds, which was the legal weight in Ohio. And once I finally, I think probably 12 or 13, I shot my first deer that first year. It was a button buck, and I shot it with a bow that looked about like the bow that you were holding in that picture.
Nice.
Had one pin. It was, very similar, very, very similar bow to that. Had one pin. It had, my dad and I took like orange fluorescent paint and painted the tip of it so you could see it in low light.
Yep.
And, from then on, I was always really into, the idea of hunting. Like, my parents have pictures of me, like, before I could, like, even hardly talk, holding my mom's curling iron like a gun. So, like, was always interested in it and always wanted to go. And then, as I finally got old enough, was fortunate enough to have two grandpas and a dad and other friends and stuff that would take me whenever I wanted to go. So
it's kind of fun to look back at the old equipment.
Oh yeah,
to see how far it's come. Do you guys remember the T-dot sights? T-dots.
I remember those pendulum sights. My
Okay,
uncle had one of those.
I remember that. T-dots. Well, I think the sight you were talking about was probably a brass sight. And
Yeah, it was brass.
at
Like
the
I
end,
remember
so
sights like that. Like I used to have those all the time, and just a kisser button or no kisser button.
Yeah.
You just line up the string kind of.
Right. Yeah. It started with the brass pins, and you would paint it with like some kind of fluorescent paint to see it better. And then the T-dot or the dot sights came out. There would either be like a little plastic dot at the end, or there'd be like a T-shaped dot at the end. And my guess is with that, there was just a little more surface area to that, to where it can pick up a little more, light and shine better. But yeah, the old T-dot sight with, I think that was a Cobra sight. Yeah, and you would hand loosen the knob to adjust the pins. So it was.
Yeah, I mean, when I was growing up shooting a bow, like it took several years before I was proficient enough. My uncle would take us out in the yard, and we'd all get together and shoot, like me and my cousins. And you could not go to the woods unless you could hit a pie plate at 25 yards. Like he was like, nope, you got to be able to hit a pie plate. And there wasn't anything too crazy beyond that, but that was the one thing he was worried about. He just wanted to make sure that you could make a good, clean, ethical kill. And getting to that point took a long time. Of practice. Went through several different bows. And then eventually you get to the point where you can shoot targets well, and then you get a deer in front of you, and you get buck fever and whatnot. So it's you kind of take for granted how long the learning curve actually is.
Yeah. The learning, I was able to shoot a long time before I could shoot, because I couldn't legally pull back 40 pounds for a long time. Man, that drove me crazy. Like, it was just so painful, because it's like I try every summer. I'd be like, and my dad would be like, you can draw it, but like you can't. You're never gonna draw that on a deer. So yeah, it's funny. And I had, bow looked very similar or something like that. Like it was a.
Yep, that was an old Hoyt, and that was a D-flex design. I mean, you could see like the brace height on that bow was like 8 inches. The handles are huge. A lot of the handles nowadays are real skinny. That handle was just like I could barely get my hand around it. The good old days. Love that stuff. And it was funny because there are so many things now that we take for granted that don't really come loose anymore, like sight pins, rests that move, that are more foolproof than what they used to be.
Oh yeah.
Like every now and then you'd hear your bow start to rattle a little bit, and your sight pins have come loose, so then you'd have to resight, and the old flipper rests. That little spring could easily bend one way or the other. Like there's just so many things that could go wrong. But
I had that on that bow. That bow that I shot that first deer with was one of those little spring rests.
Yeah.
I remember it was brutal because it was so loud when you draw like an aluminum arrow on it, because that's what I was shooting. It was just like,
I miss those old aluminum arrows, man. I would almost want to go back to them sometimes with those aluminum arrows and those and feathers.
Feathers. Yeah, I'm having a blast shooting them out of my longbow.
I mean, you could really tune your bow well. Like with your broadheads, with big fixed blade broadheads, and you could get them to fly. I mean, they were slow, but man, killed a lot of deer a long time ago. I mean, my uncles when I was a kid and my dad, like they killed a pile of deer with that type of equipment.
Yeah, I've actually thought about doing a retro hunt, going back, because I still have my first bow. Yeah. Well, excuse me, not my very first bow, but the bow that I used when I first started bow hunting for deer. Let's see if I can find a picture of it here. There we go. Okay. That bow is a Clearwater brand that was pretty popular for, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 years, and then they kind of either went out of business or faded away. But it's a Clearwater Power Master 36, I believe is what it's called.
Yep.
And that old bow, I shot tons of tournaments with it, shot really well in tournaments, and my first deer with a bow was with that. My first several deer were with that, and still have it at my parents' house in Blair, and thinking I should just rig it up sometime and hunt with it again. Just for
should. Are you going to use that old
probably
old
be pretty effective?
What's that? Are you going to use that old release that you showed me?
Oh yeah. Let's see if Ted or Logan can find those old releases there. Those are kind of fun. I don't know if I would use those or not. I didn't use those.
Oh, that's a crack shot there.
That's not even the one.
I shot my first deer with a crack shot.
Yeah, there's the old crack shot release, and there's another one over there
that's the one I'm talking about.
ball bearing release. There you go.
This is what my dad still shoots.
Are you serious? Yeah. A little closer to the camera.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I think it's a Trophy Hunter brand. I could be wrong on that, but it's a ball bearing release, and the trigger pull on that is so heavy that it just about give you target panic. But yeah, I mean,
works.
Back in the early 90s, that's what we were
I
shooting.
didn't start shooting real well at deer until I switched from fingers to a crack shot there. I always struggle.
Maybe tell the viewers to just drop down what their first bow was and tell them that they can ask questions throughout.
You can tell them.
Well, here.
Yeah,
hey guys, I'm off to the side
right there.
Jake's back here moderating.
Feel free to drop questions below as this is going on. We can answer them live here.
Yeah, for sure.
Hopefully we won't get interrupted. I forgot to put my phone on Do Not Disturb.
Oh, I got you. So it could ring at any moment.
Yeah, it could ring at any moment.
Yeah,
so.
if we lose, sometimes we have signal cut out and stuff. So just stay with us. We'll be right back on. Doesn't take us long to figure it out anymore. But
nice. Aaron McMahon says first bow was a Pearson spoiler.
Nice.
I remember those from back in the day. I think I was telling you about a guy in our archery club that had a spoiler, and he had it at 80 or 90 pounds.
Yeah.
And he wanted to break 300 feet per second, and he was doing it, shooting probably arrows at 5 grains per inch and at 80, 90 pounds, and that thing sounded like a 22 going hitting two 2x4s together when it went off, but it was fast. Blazing fast for that time. Nice.
Yeah, and going back to those older bows, like when we were younger, 25, 30 yards, like that was max range. Mm-hmm. I mean, that 30-yard shot was a long shot. Mm-hmm. You know, and nowadays you can shoot the new equipment much further. However, you're obviously much more accurate at a target much further. But when it comes to shooting game, it still is kind of a slippery slope when you start taking shots past 30, 40 yards.
I think having the people around us that we did when we were growing up hunting, all of us, telling us or teaching us how to get close to deer and how to get those good shots, was important. And, that's still so ingrained in all of us that, like, we set everything up ideally for 20 yards and in. Sometimes, we'll set up for 30 or whatever if need be, but 95% of the time, the shot that we're looking to take is going to be 20 yards.
We rarely shoot at a deer over 30 yards. Mm-hmm. Rarely.
Yeah, I mean, we got some guys that are chiming in here with some of their first bows.
Yeah, sure.
Bear Whitetail Hunter, John Rucker, Bear Whitetail Hunter. Let's see, there was somebody said Golden Eagle. Yep, yeah. Golden Eagle.
Golden Eagle was what I was. No, I shot my first buck with a Browning. I think I shot my first deer with a bow with that Golden Eagle Sparrowhawk too, though.
Yeah.
Sounds like a weird name.
It was, dude. It had like, what is it called?
Almost like a recurve
type recurved limbs on it.
Little wheels.
Oh,
if I remember right, like real small wheels.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even remember what the one that I was using was. I mean, it was black. The second one I had was
mine was about this long.
Yeah. And the second one I had was my dad's old Martin Cheetah that was still super old when I was. I mean, it was really old when I was shooting it. I think he'd had a couple bows since at that point. And I
remember
that.
My dad bought a brand new Hoyt from a local archery shop when I was like 7 or 8, and he brought that thing home in a case, and it was just like, holy cow, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I found it the other day. Like, it's so old. I mean, I think he killed one deer with it, maybe.
Yeah.
He missed several with it, but yeah.
I remember when my dad got the Matthews SQ2.
Yep.
And, like, sweet bow, especially when he first got it. And, like, he's used it for a very long time. I think he really just stopped using it.
SQ2, was that one of their first sub 40-inch bows?
Probably.
Yeah. Somebody can correct me or maybe tell us.
Yeah.
But if I remember right, that was one of their shorter bows.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, though. We got more. Yeah, Golden Eagle. Oh, Greg Pohl says Golden Eagle, then I shot Clearwater Archery Power Mag.
Nice.
That was a very popular bow. Yep. A bunch of the guys in our archery club had the power mag. That's awesome. So I'm not the only one that shot the old Clearwater back in the day.
That's pretty cool. I guess the point of our conversation here, though, for you guys, I mean, especially if you're new into archery or new into hunting, is that, we all start somewhere, and that starting point is so crucial to, I guess, your growth within the sport itself. I mean, this stuff we're talking about that we learned when we were essentially little kids, and it still carries over today. Like all of that stuff, waiting for a broadside shot, inside of 30 yards, or setting up, like you mentioned, Zach, for the correct opportunity, knowing when to draw on an animal,
knowing how to sneak through the woods and not spook everything.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's one thing.
And you learn doing that when you're hunting for squirrels. So if you're thinking about getting involved in hunting, like really think about small game hunting as a first step. That's a great thing.
Just think about all hunting, I think. Any opportunity that you have, try it and then figure out what you like and learn from all aspects of it. I mean, I think that you can learn sneakiness when you're bow fishing. I mean,
you can.
It's just all a matter of getting out there and experiencing things. And if you, like Aaron's, I guess, saying, is like, if you just dive right into deer hunting expecting success, it can be really tough if you haven't had a lot of experiences. Not saying don't dive right into deer hunting if that's what you want to do. By all means do it, but understand that there's a lot of little things that, like, we do a lot of strategy talk in our videos, but you'd never get to these points if you don't have the very base fundamentals of simply sneaking through the woods.
Yeah, and most of our strategy, it revolves around our experiences that day and what we learned that day. Like every single time we go out there, we're learning something. And that's the beauty of hunting, is there's so much there to learn. Like you're not going to figure it out in a lifetime. So there's always going to be something new for you around the corner to dabble with. But
I think one of the best experiences I had growing up getting into bow hunting was the local archery club in my hometown.
Oh, yeah.
I was 12 when it started, so that's been about 25 years ago. And it started with a core group of guys, and it built and built and built, and and has stayed super active. Like there's been a lot of kids involved, and I got a picture pulled up here. Actually, it's their Facebook page of Orion Archery in Blair, Nebraska. And if you can just see at the top there's a picture with a bunch of kids in it there that shoot in their leagues. And that was, no better way to learn about bow hunting in general and learning archery skills and also woodsmanship skills than from people, the adults that kind of, mentored us young kids back in the day. And, I mean, I think it's, if you haven't checked out your local archery club, it's definitely worth it. And I know, like I said, it was one of the best learning experiences and also just fellowshipping experiences that I had, growing up as a young bow hunter with our archery club.
Yeah, I guess something kind of similar that I had was just every year we went to camp, deer camp, which was we'd go bow hunting for a week, and that group of guys. I talk to you guys about them all the time, and, I'd go with my dad, and I remember the first year I went, I was 12, when I could pull back 40 pounds, and I'll never forget the first time I ever got to go there, and, I'm bummed every year that I'm not there, and this year maybe, but, it's just one of those deals where, those guys, they had such an impact on me, and at the time, I just thought it was cool, I just thought I was cool to be hanging out, but, the stuff that I learned from those guys on those trips is, and the memories that I have there they'll never probably be topped. That was some of the best times of my life were at those deer camps and turkey camps, and just learned so much from those guys. And I think, if you don't have people around you that are able to, even if they're not necessarily helping you learn, it's just learning with somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Go find somebody. There's somebody out there that's going to want to go hunting with you.
Social aspect of hunting, that's what we're all about,
right.
And I came from the same cloth. Except it was gun deer camp. But it was my dad, my uncles, and, a bunch of their buddies, And we went out there before my first, the night before my first gun deer season. At that point, I bow hunted for a few years. But we stayed out there at deer camp that night, and like it was so much fun. Like, and I didn't even sleep all night. I remember just laying there and like staring outside all night, like waiting to go. Because at that point, you know, I had been around it for so long, and the next morning I just, you know, went out and shot a doe with my dad, and it was just awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and then I brought that doe back to deer camp and showed everybody, and it was just, yeah, like you said, one of the coolest experiences that you can have. Deer camp atmosphere, and that's kind of what we have here all the time. Yeah. So we're super fortunate. But anybody, that's the thing, anybody can do this.
Oh yeah, well,
anybody can get together with their friends and go out on some public land or private land or whatever you got and hunt and have a great time doing it.
My friend that I hunted with for years, I went to deer camp for the first time a year before him. The next year he came, and I remember he was just had that same excitement I had the year prior. I remember waking up the next, like after the night before we were about to go hunting, and woke up and it was raining, and everybody's like, like it was raining hard, and everybody's like, I don't know, we're just gonna wait till this afternoon, we'll wait till mid-morning or whatever. I remember Ben and I were just like we can't drive, like somebody's got to take us. We're going regardless of what the weather is. But that's the fun stuff.
We got some questions rolling in, Jake.
Somebody asked what your favorite venison recipe was. I thought that was a good one. Maybe. Yeah. I know we don't get too extravagant ourselves, but Mindy whips up some good stuff for us.
Mindy makes pizza pockets with them.
Pizza pockets are good.
I'm trying to think of like if I have an actual favorite.
Chef Neil made that venison stroganoff that's real good. Yeah, we do. We eat it for everything. I mean,
we do a lot of just like we do a lot of very just like basic like
things,
steak and whatever, you know.
Yeah, I mean we go through the backstraps really quick. We just cook those just as is, sliced, you know, on a grill or something with a little bit of seasoning, and those things are just awesome.
It's tough to beat that one, to be honest. Like
venison poppers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are real good.
That's good. I mean, I like too much food to like have one thing. That's a tough question, Jake.
My favorite thing was always that rice and then cream of mushroom soup.
Oh yeah, that's real good.
My dad always mix it all together. I like that. A lot of people are asking about tips on hunting in the rain. I mean, they're saying they don't see us hunting in the rain a lot, and that's because of the cameras. But I guess they're wondering for tips on hunting in the rain. Or would you even do it if you weren't filming?
Depends on. I mean, depends on as long as it's not a tornado, which at times we're out there when they're close by.
Ted and I were totally prepared for hunting in the rain last night. It was supposed to rain.
Yeah.
The thing about rain for me is I think the deer almost have a bit sense of comfort when it's raining. You know, I think that they probably don't see a ton of hunters out in the woods on rainy days, and I think it makes them move on the right, especially the right, you know, other weather conditions. They can really be moving on rainy days, and I think this time of the year, you know, if you have a really hot scrape line, if you've got rain that comes through, and you can hunt close to that scrape line, as long as it's close to where you think, you know, the deer are bedding, where they're spending their daylight hours, that's a really good place to set up on. I mean, that might be an obvious answer to some, but that, I mean, right now scrapes are super important, and if it's raining, like, we're thinking about getting on them.
Yeah, as soon as that rain quits, they will go and open those things up. I mean, and you can see so much fresh sign, you know, immediately right after a rain or during a rain. You have all that noise cover in the woods. You know, it's gonna make it much quieter for you to sneak in and out of a bedding area if you're trying to get in really close to a bunch of deer that are bedded, and you've got the cover of raindrops and then wet ground, which is obviously gonna make it quieter for you to walk in. That's an advantage to use.
And I think I like to do a lot of still hunting. I think that's the best conditions. Or not, maybe not the best, but it's a really good condition to have for doing it. You can be really quiet.
Windy and wet that's hard to beat. You can sneak right up on deer if you have the wind in your favor, and you're going really slow in those types of conditions. You can walk right up on them. What else we got, Jake?
Oh, I'm trying to find some here.
Yeah.
Sean Gale said, it's not really as much as a question, but just commented how he loves that we're not after the giants like these other shows, but rather the deer that the everyday hunter appreciates.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, we're not opposed to shooting a
Oh,
giant
no.
buck.
I was hunting for a really big buck tonight, actually, that I know about that's been living in this area for 4 years now. But when we got set up and these other two nice bucks came out, I was telling Ted, like, they come over here and I'm shooting them, for sure. And, yeah, I mean, that's the good thing about hunting is it's not it's
all
not
about your personal
Yeah,
goals.
it's not a competition with you and another hunter. Although sometimes it seems that way, it's not like that. I mean, it's just between you and the deer.
And
basically.
and whatever like your own personal goals are. I think for me, you guys know me. I'm all over the place, up and down in hunting, and it stresses me out. But it's all like just a personal. It's a personal goal, and like I'm like challenging myself. That's why like it gets super worked up and stuff, because that for me that's like part of the fun is like trying to think it through, like really trying to think it through, and that's for me that's what I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the beauty of hunting is for you can be whatever you want it to be, the type of buck you're looking for. Get that in your head and go for it, and don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about what anybody else says.
Don't create unrealistic expectations for yourself either. Or you set yourself up for disappointment when you go out there. I mean, watch the hunting media and that sort of thing is good to learn from, but also, don't put yourself in
sometimes.
Don't put yourself in their shoes necessarily, because your situation may be completely different. If a 2-year-old buck is the biggest buck that grows around your area, then be perfectly happy shooting one of them.
And even if it isn't, like, if there's not very many that are, like, I guess that's the thing, is, like, there's just so, the state to state, county to county, I mean, even within a county, I mean, it's all different.
Changes.
Whatever your situation is going to be different. So just go out there, have fun, guys, and just have some fun and make a goal for yourself and just go for it. And
I just like getting set. I like getting in there and reading the sign and getting set up, and then having a deer do exactly what you anticipate a one to do. When they come in there to 15 yards and they're offering you a perfect broadside shot, like though it's a decent looking buck, he's probably gonna get it.
Trey is asking, what is y'all's most memorable hunt? So just start talking about the first one that comes to your mind, Greg.
Actually, it's a picture that I showed already.
The squirrel?
Yeah. Not the squirrel. That'd be pretty funny.
That one in the snow?
Yeah, that was one of my favorite hunts of all time. That would have been 1997. I think I was 16 at that point. And that was a buck where I had history, like tons of history with this deer before it was cool. Like to have history with that deer.
Right.
I think I told Zach this story the other day, or at least some of it. Mm-hmm. Saw that buck during summer, probably July sometime, and I watched him in a field. And I think I had a notebook with me and a pencil because I was like always taking notes about what I saw. And I actually sat down and drew this deer because I was watching him feeding kind of from the rear, so I drew the outline of his rack.
Pretty
and
cool.
So I actually had a drawing of that deer, and boy,
that's so much cooler than a trail camera picture.
I doubt that I have that anymore. I'm sure. I mean, that's been 20 some years ago, but I would love to somehow find that
sweet.
drawing. Okay, so I made that drawing of him, and then opening day, saw him at like 25 yards. He came out behind me, couldn't get a shot at him. Next encounter was November 7th. I had skipped school that day. November 6th, it was awesome. Saw all kinds of bucks on that property, so I asked my parents if I could skip school the next day. They gave me the thumbs up. And the funny thing is, like from the stand where I was hunting, I could actually see the high school. It was kind of like, here I am sitting with the bow. Yeah, and then that morning, a doe brought that buck right by at 18 yards. So
nice.
This is it. And I shot 3 inches under his chest.
Oh.
And that goes to show, shoot your bow throughout the year. Because I hadn't been shooting it, hadn't been practicing, or hadn't been checking it to see if it was still on, and I shot right underneath him. Went to the archery range, and I was shooting 1.5 feet low.
Oh, wow.
So something had really went wrong, like my rest, like we'd been talking about earlier, rest probably got moved or something like that. So I shot under the deer. Next encounter with them was like November 20th or something like that, 25th. I think it was just after rifle season closed, and a smaller buck had come by and had a severely mangled leg from being hit, so I decided to shoot him, knowing that he probably wasn't going to survive. And when he ran back into the bedding area and actually spooked this buck out of the bedding area. And then next encounter was December 12th on an evening hunt. He came by at about 30 yards, but it was so bitterly cold that the stand was just frozen and just popped every time I tried to move and get turned to shoot him. There was no way of doing it. Like I didn't want to spook him, so I just kind of gave up on it, and he walked by. And then 2 days later, on the morning of the 14th, I believe, I was set up probably 125 yards from where I figured he was bedding. And he came back at about 8:30 that morning. Shot him at 7 yards, and he ran down the hill and then ran into the fence there.
Right.
And I'll never forget it. He stood there for a second and then toppled over and just like kind of rolled
Flipped
over
the
the fence, and it shook the fence all the way back up. He probably went 40 yards. And I just remember seeing that fence shaking all the way up under the tree stand. Like it's just kind of funny, the things that
the little
remember.
things like that.
But that's
cool.
Kind of a long story, but that's one of my favorite hunts ever.
Sure. What about you, Zach?
You're next.
Okay. I
got way too many. I got to try to pick like just a decent one.
The first buck I shot with my bow was pretty cool. I was sitting in a stand that my uncle called Old Faithful, just an old wooden ladder stand. We used to build our own ladders when we were younger. Just go to the hardware store, wherever, get some lumber and build them probably 10, 12 feet off the ground, And I was up in that stand, and he shot several bucks out of there. I think my cousin, who was hunting across the field from me, had killed his first buck with a bow the year before that out of the same stand. So I was sitting there like I really wanted, whenever we went in that night, it was his property to hunt, my cousins and my uncles. They just allowed me to go with them sometimes. And I was just crossing my fingers. I'm like, I hope Brandon lets me go to Old Faithful, because I just love that spot, and because so many deer got shot there before. And Brandon was like, I found some fresh rubs over here, so I'm just going to go sit over here on this side of the field. Me and Dad put a stand in there last week. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go sit in Old Faithful. He's like, oh, yeah, you probably won't see anything. They haven't been coming out over there. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I went over there and, one little, I don't know what he was, like a 5-pointer or something. Walked by. I looked over there like 5 minutes left of legal light, and he was standing there 25 yards just chewing on grass or something. And he was right on the trail, like coming right in front of the stand. He walked behind a bush, and I drew, and it was just perfect. Walked right into 15 yards. And I just grunted real quiet to stop him and shot, and it disappeared right behind his shoulder. Nice. And I knew that I just drilled him, And he took off running, and I looked back down there, and a real nice buck is standing there right behind him. I didn't even care. I just started climbing down to the stand because it was the first buck I'd shot with my bow. Yeah. And this is before dark, and I'm down and out of there. And I'm heading across that field to my cousin. And I'm getting closer to him, and I start whistling at him and, waving and stuff. And I get over there, and he just starts chewing me out because he's like, I had deer coming in over here. He's like, what's going on? I was like, I shot a buck. I drilled him. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
That is good.
Oh, man, favorite. I mean, I just have a lot of stories that I really enjoy. I don't necessarily know that they're enjoyable for everybody, but this is a funny one. This always comes to mind. It wasn't that fun for me, but it's funny now. So one time I was hunting with my dad, and before I could draw back, the last year or two that I couldn't draw back a compound, I would hunt with my grandpa's crossbow. And my dad would sit, so I'm like probably 10, 11. My dad would sit like 30 yards from me in his stand, or 40 yards, whatever, to where he could just barely see me. And I would go sit on the ground with that crossbow. And I was sitting there and, getting a little bit tired. And it was, back then, no cell phones. I didn't carry a watch. Like, I had no idea what time it was ever. And, had no idea when my dad wanted to get down. And, he was hunting. And I was just pretty much along, I was just kind of over there.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd always look up at him and be like, I'm hungry, I'm cold, mostly cold, and well, probably hungry too. And I'd sit in there, and all of a sudden I kind of wake up. I look over at my dad, and he's getting down. I'm like, yep. So I start packing my stuff up, and he comes over to me, and he's just he's walking towards me, shaking his head, and no. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, am I in trouble? And he's just like, we're not leaving. And I was like, he's like, what happened? And I was just like, what do you mean? He's like, you didn't see that buck? And I was just like, no. And he's like, were you sleeping? And I was just like, yeah, I dozed off. And apparently a buck walked right past me at like 15 yards, and like I was just asleep.
It must have been a deep sleep to not hear that thing walking by.
I had no idea. I think, I was like on the edge of, I actually, from that very spot, shot bucks from that very spot. I was sitting on the ground, but it was a CRP little patch back in there, and they'd walk through that. I mean, just a perfect little transition area. But like I was just like totally asleep. Don't even and like it's funny now. I mean, I was pretty bummed then because he was like, it was a pretty decent buck, like you would have been really happy. And I was just like, and he just went and climbed up in the stand. Didn't see anything. Yeah, didn't see anything the rest of the day.
That's funny.
I don't know if that's my favorite one, but it's a pretty funny one.
That's a good one.
What broadheads do you shoot and why?
Oh, wow. How much time you got?
I got all night.
Everybody shoots something slightly different for a variety of different reasons. We get asked this question quite frequently. And I don't know that any of us are just completely sold on a specific broadhead. I switched back to fixed blades this year. I've shot mechanicals for several years. I've shooting the 3-blade Exodus 125s now. And I like them okay. Killed a elk and a buck with them so far. I switched back to the fixed because I had growing concerns with mechanicals about deflections. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that doesn't worry me as much with a fixed head is on a quartering angle of any kind. I think the odds are less with a fixed head that the arrow in the broadhead's going to deflect off of a rib or bone or whatever, and the odds increase when you have a mechanical head. I want something that's going to cut on impact, and drive straight in. A real good sharp fixed head. But I shot mechanicals for years, like those also.
I used mechanicals for a couple years, didn't really care for it at all, had a lot of deflection issues. I did shoot a buck in Nebraska last year with a Rage expandable and did great. But I think for me, the situation's got to be perfect. It's got to be a perfectly broadside shot, totally clear, and I hunt a lot on the ground. And that was ultimately the reason I went back to Slick Tricks, is the one that I'm shooting right now. It's 4-blade Broadhead. And I shot those for a long time before I used the mechanicals. And the reason for the fixed blade on the ground, there's a couple major points. One, just simply walking around in the woods with an arrow knocked. If you're using an expandable, that thing is just trying to come apart. It's snagging on everything. It's really miserable. And actually hunting in Nebraska last year with a Rage was when I decided that was going to be a huge issue. And then the other thing is we've field tested this, like shooting fixed heads through some amount of vegetation works. Like where if you shoot that mechanical broadhead and it hits something a little bit too stiff, it's got potential to open that thing up, which your penetration is just totally lost then. With that fixed blade, it'll
deflect hard too. Mm-hmm. Like Zach Kurzieski a few years ago,
yep.
He missed that bucket like 8 yards,
yep.
and it hit a branch the size of a pinhead.
Yep. Right
in front of the deer. I mean, just a few feet in front of his vitals, and it literally deflected the arrow straight into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, with a fixed head, that might not happen.
Yeah, I mean, when we were in Nebraska, Logan and I, just for fun, were like seeing how much you could shoot, and like it was kind of freaky, like how like we'd put the target back there and you wouldn't even see the target, and I would take my pin and put it on the head and move it over to where the shoulder would be, and then down, and would shoot through all that grass, and it went right through it all. Mm-hmm. I mean, like sunflowers, like those little sunflowers, it went right through it, like 15 yards of the stuff.
Yep.
Not saying that you should do that, but that's. I mean, I wouldn't shoot at a deer like that, but, if there's a little bit of grass or just, any type of vegetation, leaves, little sticks, whatever, and you can't see that when you're on the ground with low light, even if you're in a tree stand, plow right through that fixed head, and that's ultimately why I did that.
And Greg likes mechanicals, big cutting diameter mechanicals.
Yeah, I started out shooting Wasp broadheads, Thunderheads, Muzzies, G5. I've shot a little bit of everything over the years. Mm-hmm. So With my longbow, I'm shooting Magnus Stingers, 150 grain, 2 blades. So
those things look nasty, man.
Yep. Excited to put them to use.
Lots of trade-offs with broadheads. I mean, you can get those big cutting diameter mechanicals that are going to cut larger holes, possibly have better blood trails with them, but you're going to have issues like we just mentioned. So it's right. And then you have smaller holes with fixed blades. I mean,
the other thing too is like I have a little bit of a tendency to hit tight to that shoulder, and I want that air to be able to drive through that little bit of whatever it is, cartilage or whatever on the edge of the shoulder.
Sure.
I mean, even the buck I shot in Nebraska hit a little bit of that, and it went right through it. Now, if you're a guy that has just very consistent hits deer just a touch back or way back, shooting that bigger broadhead is way better. I think it's all just kind of, it's obviously preference. It's obviously what you have confidence in, but it's also if you have a tendency of doing something, like a tendency to hunt on the ground, tendency to hunt out of in field edges, if you shoot longer ranges, whatever, all that stuff's going to play a factor in your broadhead choice.
Well, we're at 45 minutes. What else you got,
Yeah,
Jake?
we better rattle through some questions here before we wrap up.
I've been thinking of the long answered ones. I'm going to have to scroll a little bit here.
Somebody asked, Billy Cody asked how I did in Nebraska, and I hunted for a total of 1 hour. Saw some deer, but I got a phone call from Logan and Zach that Zach had shot one, so I bailed out, and that was the only time I spent in the field in Nebraska, actually hunting for myself. But I'm going to go back hopefully in early November and hunt for 5-6 days there. Excited about that.
Yeah, I'm excited just to see the footage that comes away from that. See those sweet characters running around.
What's your second favorite animal to hunt next to whitetails?
My first favorite animal is elk.
Yeah.
And then whitetails and turkeys are right there together.
Yeah. Turkeys.
Turkey.
Love turkey.
At this point, yep, turkey.
Yeah.
There's gonna be so much more someday, though. Oh, buddy.
Mule deer, elk, the western game.
Mule deer and elk and pronghorn, like those things are just like constantly in my mind. I know it's gonna be.
I can't
awesome.
afford to go elk hunting every year, but like it's amazing.
Somebody asked if we're going to be hunting with a decoy this year. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I wish we had one tonight, Ted. Whew, we had one tonight, and we might have been shooting a buck.
Yeah.
'Cause they came out at like
looks like old
80
Zip
yards.
himself asked that question
Yep.
there. Zip, how's it going, buddy? Excited to meet you someday.
Zip is Ted's father for people.
Yeah.
And Ted is behind the camera for those of you who don't know who Ted is.
Let's see, there's a couple of people that have asked what we do for daily jobs. And I guess we kind of addressed that early on.
Sort of.
Like we're content creators.
Mm-hmm.
We have a media company. So we do hunting-related video production photography and non-hunting related video production photography. So that's...
Rodney Cooper asked this question a couple times now. I feel like we should answer it. He's asking if you were going to hunt, just pick a state in the Midwest. If you were going to pick 1 week to hunt it, so I'm guessing he has a vacation and he's looking to go on a hunt.
And he's probably looking for an over-the-counter state,
Yep.
I'm assuming.
Rut hunt, it seems like.
Can you buy Illinois over-the-counter?
I believe so. It's just expensive.
It's just expensive.
I was gonna say Missouri.
I was gonna say Missouri,
I'm just
Nebraska.
There's like 40 that you
Wisconsin,
could do. That would all be good.
Kentucky. Kentucky would be really good. Oklahoma, that's a good one. Oklahoma may have, I think their season runs a little bit further into November, and they have like a muzzleloader season that comes in before rifle potentially. That is really good. As far as the time frame goes, go whenever it makes sense for you. I always, in Missouri, I always liked that 29th and 30th through the 5th of November.
Yeah, Missouri and Ohio, I feel like you and I both think the same, but we feel differently about here. You know, like we like both, all of us like later in November here in Iowa, but like Aaron and I always talk about like Ohio and Missouri.
I think with a lot of states, if you're looking to bow hunt, you got to be conscious of when the rifle or whatever gun season comes in, because things definitely change a lot after that in most states at least.
They do. Or go earlier, you know, in the year. And we just did that. I mean, we just went to Nebraska and Kentucky and Minnesota early and had success.
Really early can be really good because there's a lot of people that it's too hot for them, or they don't.
Yeah, there's
they
no
like to hunt
pressure.
the rut. I mean, it was kind of absurd how little pressure was going on in Minnesota. Like it threw us off a lot. So
no pressure. And here in Iowa, it's quote unquote October lull time. You know, when warmer temperatures the last 2 days, and
they're underground, Aaron. You can't get them right now.
That's not true. We've seen several nice ones just in the first couple days of season here. So, yeah, hunt when you can. If you have to take a specific time, then
that can really be a good way to lengthen
your
season.
Style, you know.
Yeah, but if I guess I'm saying if you got like an October opener or something like that, there's a lot of states where you can travel to hunt September and be in the woods.
Yeah,
when you couldn't be in the woods back home, which is why we traveled early this year.
Right,
and it could be fun.
Had a blast in the last month.
Can learn a lot and hunt a different time of year than you ever had. It's pretty fun.
A couple questions about when Zach is going to cut his hair.
Never.
I was going through some old
Could
footage
potentially
today.
be really long at one point.
Keep asking.
The footage I was
just keep
looking
growing.
at from 2015 today, like it was weird to see it shorter.
Yeah.
Like it's still relatively long haired compared to most people, but it was weird to see it that short.
Yeah, it was probably more like somewhere between. Yeah, it's probably a little bit longer than Ted's over there. Nobody can see Ted. What am I even saying there? about right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes that happens. But I like it long. Permanent hat. Permanent camouflage.
There you go.
We've had a few people asking if we're going to hunt different states: Indiana, Arkansas, Alabama, and I mean,
we hope to hunt them all in our lifetime. It's just
we're gonna hunt Alabama soon. Probably this season, first of the year is what we're looking at for Alabama. Love to hunt Arkansas. Tons of public down there. Want to get back to Oklahoma. Just speaking for myself here. I mean, you're wanting to hunt Ohio.
New York, baby. Oh,
yeah.
I think about
I want to go northeast
daily.
and hunt like New Hampshire, Massachusetts. That'd be really fun.
Is there a future public land challenge with Corn Dog?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah. We'll be doing more collaborations with those guys. Corn Dog and Hot Dog. Yeah. Brody and his brother.
For those of you that don't know, Brody used to hang out with us a lot more than he does now. But him and his brother are making videos, and you can find them, Whitetail Instinct, on YouTube.
Yep. Pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on an hour.
Yeah. Well, you got any more we need to address real quick before we let them go?
Oh, there's a bunch of them we could address, but I'm getting pretty hungry.
Okay. Let's do one more before we're done.
Let me think here. I got to get a good one. Zach, you can fill in until I know you probably have something to say.
Yeah, there's some good bucks moving around out there. They're
not underground.
Here we go. Everybody's wondering if we're going to come to Michigan, and the answer is yes, eventually when we can afford it and when we have time.
Yes.
Yeah, all these
we've discussed going to Michigan a bunch of times.
This is something just in general that I feel like it was worth addressing more often than we do. We don't totally want to hunt your state. We want to hunt your area, and we appreciate all of the recommendations in all of these areas and all of the offers to stay and hang out. We wish we could do it all. We just can't. At this point, for one, time is the major issue. Like, we just can't hunt 50 states in 1 year. Just can't do it.
We can't afford it.
Can't afford it either. And, I mean, to go figure out these areas or figure out multiple areas in a state in a given year, I mean, we'll be lucky if we get to them all in our lifetime. And, I mean, we're going to try, but,
Every year we're going to continue hunting different areas. I mean, that's the plan. But as far as whitetail hunting goes, we're going to get to a handful each year. And then the next year we'll try to sprinkle in some more. Michigan's very high on the list for sure. We want to hunt up there. It looks awesome. There's all kinds of public land.
We love every state that whitetails exist in.
Yeah.
Here we go. Jeremy said, talk about our shirts. We do have merchandise that is available.
I got a Deer True shirt on right now.
There you go.
Yeah. We have multiple different shirts. You can go to our website. There's links in our YouTube description. It's on our Facebook page.
On Legendary Whitetails website.
Yep.
There's a THP tab.
Yep.
And all that stuff helps us to be able to afford to go to the state that you want us to go to.
Yep. And we listen to you guys too.
Yeah.
We don't mind the suggestions one bit. because that just shows us that people are interested in a particular area. And then we'll try it out at some point.
Right on.
Right on, Greg says.
All right.
Well, guys, it's time to eat. Jake is over here. He's had it. He's come in from the field. He's got his food sitting over there. It's getting cold. Okay.
We have curry tonight.
Yeah. Yeehaw.
Grab that bowl, Ted. Let's show
Like
Let's show the people what we're eating.
This is what
curry.
This is what my wife Mindy has been working on all evening.
Oh, I
Preparing.
love curry.
Let's show the people what we're eating.
Okay, once things start getting weird, that's when we cut it off. Thanks guys, for joining us. We'll see y'all on the next one.
Oh, thanks for Bowhunting 360 for hosting us, too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Appreciate
it's been
it.
fun.